Hey, it's Amy. Welcome back to my channel. The wind is so loud today. Have you ever wondered what the different phases or cycles are in your training plan? In today's video, I'm going to take a dive into what these different cycles mean, their purpose, and why they are important. But first, if you haven't already, click that subscribe button and the bell icon so you get notified whenever I upload a video. So let's talk about training plan cycles. First off, lots of coaches use different terminology and different combination of cycles in their own training plan. Not one way is better or worse, but what the coach has found to be the best for their coaching or for the specific athlete that they're working with. Today I'm going to just share a general training plan and what's typically found in it. But again, the order may differ than your training plan or other training plans that coaches use. But there's a general kind of guideline and structure that training plans typically follow. When I first started getting into running, I had no idea what the different phases or cycles in a training plan are, what periodization meant, and why it's important, and just anything. Now the different workouts that I do make a little bit more sense because I understand most of the time that why they're there, because usually they're for a specific purpose and they're at specific times to help with your training plan, and it also depends on what race you're building for too, but really they're there for a specific reason. But first I wanted to cover a few terms that tend to be used. The first one is a macrocycle. A macrocycle is basically just your overall training plan. So this could be like a spring build, fall build, or even your whole entire year. Typically within the macrocycle, there are 3 phases. There's the base, the competition, and recovery. And lots of different terms people use, and I'm gonna go into detail about these in just a few minutes. But back to, macrocycle, then there are mesocycles. A mesocycle is a section within your macrocycle, typically around 2 to 6 weeks, depending on how long your macrocycle is. Each mesocycle has a specific focus, like strength or speed, for example. And lastly, a microcycle is basically just your week, your training week. Either go Monday to Monday or Sunday to Sunday, whatever day you start on. Okay, so let's talk about the macrocycle and the 3 phases that are found within the macrocycle. Sometimes the first phase is called by many names, but it's typically like the base, or the introductory phase, or the prep phase, or endurance phase. Lots of different words, but they all have the same meaning. This phase could be from 8 to 12 weeks. It all depends on the fitness and experience of the runner. A beginner runner needs a much longer time to build up their base than an elite runner or someone who's been running for a very long time. The next phase is the competition phase, usually around 11 weeks. This phase includes your goal race. And lastly, the recovery phase, which happens immediately after your goal race. This could be between 3 to 5 weeks depending on what race that you just did. A recovery from a 5K is a little different than a recovery from a marathon. You still need to rest, but the length differs. Okay, cool, Amy. So now we know the 3 phases. Let's talk about them in a little bit more detail. So the endurance prep base phase is, again, as I mentioned, 8 to 12 weeks, very depending on the athlete. The base phase gives you a time to slowly build up your mileage without suddenly spiking it, and then you could possibly get injured. I personally done this when I first started running. I kind of just had no base fitness whatsoever, and I decided to do a half marathon, and you have to start doing longer runs, and I just didn't, again, have that fitness to support this, and my IT bands issue was bad and I could barely walk. So learn from my mistake. Don't build too quickly and just make sure you have a solid base. This is also the part of the plan where you work a lot on endurance. I think it's one of the largest parts of the training plan, though the competition phase can be long too, but the best time to work on your weaknesses is in the base phase. You can work on your form and as well as your strength. Strength training is huge in your base fitness time because you're not doing as much high mileage, so you have a little bit more time to concentrate on your core and just overall strength. Strength training makes a huge difference, and I honestly think that's why I've done so well, or especially at the beginning when I first got into running, I was going to the gym a lot. That just gave my body the strength to kind of help me figure out running, but also to help my endurance as well. I've talked a lot about strength training, and I know that I really highly suggest people doing it, but the best time again is to do it in the endurance or prep phase. The main goal of the base phase is to build a solid foundation upon which you can put the rest of your training on. Without a solid foundation, it's easy for cracks to appear, which could result in injuries, burnout, not hitting your paces, and just lots of things. In the base phase, you start training your central nervous system. By training the central nervous system, you're making the pathways between the brain and the muscles more efficient. We also increase our aerobic capacity, which is basically, for marathon trainers, is the bread and butter of our training. We run long, so we have to have lots of aerobic endurance. Anaerobic is good, but again, aerobic is our main thing we use when we're running a marathon. Another thing that gets built up in the base phase is your long run, especially again for marathon runners. You have to build it up because you have to run very far in a marathon. I've talked about why the long run is important, but here's a short recap to remind you why the long run is everything in marathon training. You get denser mitochondria, which is the energy factories of your cells. These denser capillaries deliver oxygenated blood to your muscles. You get more mental toughness because you have to grind out all those kilometers, as well as improved muscular strength and enhanced running efficiency or economy. Again, long run, so important, but in the endurance or base phase, you build that up so you're at a high level, or a certain level. So when you start entering in the competition phase, you have that foundation of kilometers without building mileage and the intensity of workouts at the same time, because that's just a recipe for disaster. Okay, we have finished the base phase and now we are ready to enter the competition phase. As I mentioned, it's around 11 weeks for the competition phase, and it includes your goal race in it. This phase has not only the highest mileage, but also some of the fastest mileage that you will do. The competition phase or cycle prepares you for the different aspects of training. Incorporated in this phase are different mesocycles designed to improve the 3 principles of training, and those are speed, force, and endurance. These different mesocycles can come in different orders depending on, again, the coach, but they all are working towards building you to become a stronger runner and the goal of crushing your goal race. One of these mesocycles is the stamina mesocycle. Sometimes this is around 4 weeks or so. This is often the time in the training plan where hills are incorporated. Hills are our best friend and the best way to get strength without putting too much strain on the body as well. They develop strength, speed, and power, and they also make you have a better form because you have to focus on your form rather than, because you're not going super fast up the hill, but you really have to have a good form to run efficiently up a hill. Another mesocycle is an economy mesocycle. This focuses on endurance. This mesocycle is designed to help your body use fuel and energy efficiently. When your system is more economic, it allows you to run faster, longer, because you're not using up as much energy as you used to. And because your body is more economic, it allows more blood flow to reach your muscles again, which helps you run faster for longer without tiring. Often endurance is developed by doing these specific workouts, and again, there's lots of different words for it, but often it's called tempo, lactate threshold, or lactic turn point. Whatever it's called, it's a vital part of your training plan. When you do these type of workouts, it's when your body starts to produce more lactic acid than it knows what to do with, or what it can process. So the more you do these threshold workouts, the better your body becomes at getting rid of or dealing with the lactic, and so your kind of threshold gets higher as you keep training. This allows you to run faster. So when you start a training plan, often your paces kind of drop because you're just naturally getting more efficient and stronger, and you might just find your paces a little easier. Sometimes it only may be a few seconds, but as you get faster, even mere seconds is just awesome. And another mesocycle is a speed mesocycle, which I hope you can guess works on speed. All of these mesocycles could be from 2 to 4 weeks, just depending on the length of your training plan and, again, your coach. The speed mesocycle is where you do the fastest, shortest workouts. This mesocycle is really to help you as a runner have speed and strength for the end of the marathon. You know, to have that kind of final kick at the end is just so good to have. And when you work on your strength and speed, sometimes you'll have it, not always, but it's just you prepare your body to have that strength to be able to do that. My husband is like the king of the final kick. Like, he'll be like dying, and then that last kilometer, he's just like, pew, gone. I don't know how he does it. It's pretty phenomenal, but I have not had that much. But yeah, he just is the king of the final kick. So as I mentioned, some training plans have the speed earlier in the plan and some have it near the end. I'm sure there's lots of research done for both, and I have done it both personally for different training plans, and I'm not sure which one I prefer, but I think it's just as long as you do it, that is important for me. But again, I'm sure there's lots of research, and so that's just, the speed mesocycle is just a really important one to get that kind of, that turnover. And it also makes marathon pace easy, or whatever pace you're going for in your goal race. Like, I do 5K work, and then the next workout I do marathon pace. It feels like a dream. And the final phase or cycle is the recovery phase. This happens immediately after your goal race. As I mentioned before, your recovery time depends on what race you just did. For me, I realized that I really need to take a full week off of running after a marathon. After Boston, I tried running maybe like 3 or 4 days after, just to see if it would help me feel better. It didn't. I think it even delayed my recovery by a couple weeks, so I've learned that a full week off is what I need. Some people even take like 2-3 weeks off. I just think it's important physically and mentally to recover after your goal race, especially if you've been working for it for a long time. And if you jump back into training like right away, immediately, you could get burnt out, injured, and you could just, not do as well as you want to in your next training plan. And hopefully most microcycles, or just your week of training, it follows the strategy of hard, easy days. So basically, it's a good idea to avoid doing hard back-to-back efforts, unless they are different and using different systems. Strength training can be done the day of or the day after as hard workout, because strength training engages the system differently than your lactate threshold or your other workouts. So it's not really considered a back-to-back hard effort, but I just wouldn't recommend doing like a VO2 max on Wednesday and then Thursday do your tempo effort. This doesn't give your body the chance to recover, and you could get injured. Within microcycles, it typically has 1 long run, easy runs, 1 VO2 max effort, and 1 threshold or lactate effort. Most studies, and I think plans, agree not to do more than 1 VO2 or 1 threshold workout, though there can be exceptions and you can do it, it's just maybe not all the time. Another thing you might see in your training plan is that every 3rd microcycle you might get reduced mileage, or you just stay at the same. This isn't to incorporate recovery into your mesocycle, because you want to, build, but you also don't want to burn out and get injured on your way to your goal race. I like recovery week, though sometimes I just want to go for a run and do more, but it's also really important for me to take a break physically and mentally. Marathon training can be exhausting, or just training for any race, and sometimes you lose the energy or lose the motivation to go for your run, and having a little downtime just helps you, or can help get that spark back and get you raring to go out for your bigger workouts again. Every plan does it differently, but I think it's just personally a good idea to kind of drop a little bit or to stay the same before building again. So to recap, you have your macrocycle, which is your training plan, a mesocycle, which can be typically 2 to 4 weeks, which work on a specific aspect of your training, which are speed, force, or endurance. Then you also have a microcycle, which is your week of training. Then within the macrocycle, you have different phases, like your base or endurance phase, your competition phase, and then you have your recovery phase. I know I threw a lot of terms out there, but I hope it gives you a general kind of idea of how your training plan is structured. Every coach uses different timelines for the mesocycles, but if you look at your training plan, they're in there at some point working on different aspects of the training principles, and they're there for a specific reason. So I just wanted to kind of go over them just so you can be aware, and maybe you can, look at your training plan and figure out, oh, this must be for this, or you can ask your coach, what is the specific purpose of this, etc. So I just wanted to give you more information. I think the more you know, it just helps you train better, and I just wish I knew all this when I was first starting and maybe could have avoided lots of mistakes. I don't know, but I just love knowing how a plan is structured, and it just, gives me confidence, but also a reason. I'm like, why are we doing this workout? I'm like, well, it's probably, it's a hill workout, developing strength, etc. Whatever terminology you or your coach use, I hope you found this video useful and helpful, and if you liked it, click that thumbs up button. As always, happy training and running, and I'll see you next time.